I was considering actual coming of age rituals, like Rumspringa of the Amish, which is, for those who've never heard of it, it's called the running around period, when Amish youth of both sexes at 16 or 17 are allowed to be freed for some amount of time from the restrictions and many of the perks of the Amish community and church. And then at the end of some period, they must choose. They must choose to either come back into the fold with all of the positives and negatives that accompany that, or to reject their life heretofore, up until then, completely, and to go out into the world and not be Amish anymore. So
am I correct that you said it a little too carefully? I think they are allowed to participate as a modern person.
Well, I said it very carefully because I didn't spend a lot of time, and mostly the books. I don't have access to a good library anymore. One of the few perks of modern college affiliation is an excellent library. So I dug as much as I could in the little bit of time that I spent at it, and it seems that for those who have heard of it, mostly what we have in our heads is kind of a time of, almost like spring break, right? It's like college kids on spring break. All the restrictions are off and they're going to be at their worst, right? I think Rumspringa often actually has some adult Amish still overseeing. There's still a lot of organized activities. I suspect that there's some of that, but it does seem like it's actually a much more staid and less sort of orgiastic experience.
Well, wait.
We may imagine.
I would never have imagined that a person raised Amish, liberated to do what they want, would go spring break. I mean, I think, frankly, most kids avoid that.
Well, it's possible that there was just a reality TV show about this that got into people's heads, because that seems to be the thing that is in people's heads about it.
Well, my guess would be, if you've been properly raised, and if there's one thing that an Amish community is likely to do, it's to properly raise its children.
Yeah.
Then you liberate them, and they're going to be skeptical of an awful lot of what the modern world has to offer. I wouldn't imagine.
But also quite curious.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of course. But anyway, the basic point is they are liberated to some extent, maybe fully. What that means they actually do is an open question. And then I think it's a year. It varies. They come back and they have to decide whether they want to continue effectively in the modern world, or they want to return to their
Yeah, so I guess that version is much tidier than the actual reality. Is part of why I was being very careful, because I had a couple of things in my head, sort of that version, and then the spring break version, and neither of them are true, it seems.
Yeah.
But probably to some degree, there's as much variation as there are people who engage in this. One thing that I think holds from what we have understood in the past is that the vast majority, almost to a person, come back into the fold, come back to be Amish again. But anyway, that got me thinking about this video that I saw back in October of 2021, in which well, actually, why don't we, Zach, if you would play the first almost 2.5 minutes of this. It's a news report on a channel that hopefully will be obvious.
When it comes to actions taken to address the COVID-19 threat, hindsight is still very much underway. For your consideration, a story and outcome you probably aren't hearing much about anywhere else. It takes place in the heart of Amish country.
Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Thousands of families lead lives largely separate from modern America. The Amish are a Christian group that emphasizes the virtuous over the superficial. They don't usually drive, use electricity, or have TVs. And during the COVID-19 outbreak, they became subjects in a massive social and medical experiment.
So it's safe to say there was a whole different approach here in this community when coronavirus broke out than many other places.
Absolutely.
Calvin Lapp is Amish Mennonite.
There's 3 things the Amish don't like, and that's government. They won't get involved in government. They don't like the public education system. They won't send their children to education, and they also don't like the health system. They rip us off. Those are three things that we feel like we're fighting against all the time. Well, those three things are all part of what COVID is.
After a short shutdown last year, the Amish chose a unique path that led to COVID-19 tearing through at warp speed. It began with an important religious holiday in May.
When they take communion, they dump their wine into a cup, and they take turns to drink out of that cup. So you go the whole way down the line, and everybody drinks out of that cup. So if one person has coronavirus, the rest of the church is going to get coronavirus. First time they went back to church, everybody got coronavirus.
Lapp says they weren't denying coronavirus, they were facing it head on.
It's a worse thing to quit working than dying. But to shut down and say that we can't go to church, we can't get together with family, we can't see our old people in the hospital, we got to quit working. You're working, it's going completely against everything that we believe. And you're changing our culture completely to try to act like they wanted us to act the last year. And we're not going to do it.
So he says, there's three things that the Amish won't get involved with: government, education, and healthcare. And those three things are all central in the COVID response. Remarkable. Remarkable.
And there's a, so I don't know if you'll remember this, but when we first started discussing writing The Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, I wanted chapter 1 to be titled, Are the Amish Right? That, of course, got long since abandoned as we developed our idea of what should be in there. But I think the question is an important one, because the Amish, of course, seem strange to us. It's like the very definition of anachronism to be driving your horse in, 2022.
On asphalt.
On asphalt, right. On the other hand, given the theme of the book, which is hypernovelty, or at least that's one of the central themes of the book, is hypernovelty, the question is, well, all right, you have these people who bailed out of technology, or bailed out of the advance of technology, and the question really is, at a net level, were they right that the trouble is not worth it? And in any case,
later in this video, he says, no, the narrator says, the journalist says, one thing's clear: there is no evidence of any more deaths among the Amish than in places that shut down tight. Some claim there were fewer here. That's without masking, staying at home, or much vaccination.
Right, which raises all kinds of interesting questions, because the Amish are not in a great position to perfectly protect themselves to the extent that
right. And as we hear here, they got they believe, and many people have had this experience, and why are we mistrusting, maltrusting? I don't even know what the word is anymore. People who say, okay, someone had COVID and they did the sharing, we can't hear it when you watch it, so I don't remember if it was wine or what. If they're sharing the thing, and then everyone got sick,
right? And
then they ended up all better.
But what I mean is, they can't protect themselves from the folly of the modern world, in the sense that if vaccination drove the evolution of variants, they're exposed to variants too. So to the extent that what this story is about herd immunity, they are not in a position to prevent the thing from evolving away because of what modern folks are doing to it rather than what they did. Mm-hmm. Nonetheless, in spite of that, the benefit of doing, it's not even exactly nothing, but the benefit of not imagining that you were going to outwit technologically this virus may well have been superior in the aggregate. And this is one of the things I don't know that we will ever get an honest accounting of it.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important that at some point we get an honest accounting of the difference between, I think it would be 3 categories. One is what we did, right? What were the consequences of that for human health, well-being, and longevity? There's a question, and also things like happiness, correlated damage. Second thing would be if one did nothing, right? Mm-hmm. And the third thing would be if we had approached it organically, rather than the top-down, the CDC is gospel view of what we should have done, if doctors were allowed to do what doctors are supposed to do, which is be scientists and try out things based on the symptoms they see in front of them and discover what works and compare notes and, prescribe as they will.